Andy, and welcome to the Growth Advantage podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Hi, Rebecca. Yes, well, thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm really keen to have a quick chat with you today. So, yeah.
To start with, I'd love to hear a bit more about you and your business and your role within it, if that's okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my name is Andy Donnachie. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the CPD Group. So we are a CPD accreditation organization. Okay, so we provide accreditation services to CPD providers from all across the world, reviewing and assessing their CPD provision to make sure it meets our accredited framework standards and the requirements of the industries that they operate in. Making sure that the course itself or the CPD provision, whether that's a webinar, whether it's a podcast like this, or, whatever that CPD provision looks like, making sure that, it's the best it can be ultimately. So then, once we've been through the process of review and assessment with an organization, we'll provide accreditation for their particular piece of CPD. And then they're able to use that accreditation for their own marketing purposes or promotional purposes, and to ultimately build trust in the professionals that we're taking part in the training, that the course is of a standard that's going to meet their needs.
Great. And are you focusing on particular niches or sectors, or do you have a broad scope?
No, we have quite a broad scope. We're accredited training in all sorts of industries right across the spectrum, to be quite honest. So yes, we're looking to work with all CPD providers in every single industry to make sure that they're doing the best that they can do.
Fantastic. Are there any particular current trends that you're aware of or noticing in the market at the moment that changes the way you do business?
Well, it's quite an interesting one, actually. We've had a kind of a recent influx of different courses from three kind of key industries. One of them is the finance industry. We do a lot of work with events and, large-scale organizations within the finance industry, and we're seeing quite a bit of training providers in that space coming to us looking for accreditation for their training courses. We've also had a recent influx of people that are delivering courses around dog grooming and the training of dogs and things like that, which is fantastic. But then also, we've had quite a large influx, which I would say is probably the biggest one. People in the health and well-being space delivering training in mental health or in various elements of the health and well-being.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I mean, there's quite a broad spectrum there, and sort of the health and well-being and the dog grooming. Do you think have those things sort of developed more since pandemic? Would you say when people were sort of doing more things to do with the health and well-being at that time, and also quite a lot of people would got dogs to dog walking and that kind of thing? Is that when you perhaps that sort of picked up?
I'd say that it has a massive impact on it, especially the health and well-being, because that has generated a lot of working from home within organizations, even though the pandemic is now behind us. So there are kind of mental struggles that come with those things, and then also the well-being factors of working from home and, not mingling in the office in the way that you once did, so there's a lot of stuff being generated to help and support professionals in those kind of environments.
Right, that's really interesting, isn't it? So, and then it's interesting that you started off with finance, and then we ended up with health and well-being and dog grooming. So it really is a broad spectrum. That's great. Are there any sort of new processes that you're seeing being used in business, business such as yours? Obviously, there's the great big influx of AI in business use at the moment. Are people expecting you to implement that into your business, or other sort of technological advances, as it were?
It's not so much implementing it in our business. Is what we're seeing a lot is people who, using AI to support the development of training materials. So, people are using the tool, and it is a fantastic tool, but it has its limitations still at this point in time. It's developing rapidly, but still, we would say to people, look, if you're using AI to generate the materials to support your training, then once you've used AI, just use it as a foundation. Bank on it being completely correct, if that makes sense, because it is scouring the internet, and there is a lot of misinformation on websites. There is a lot of inaccurate information out there as well, and outdated information that AI will just scrape and bring into the piece. Okay, so it's about using it as a foundation, making sure that you are reading everything that is coming out of the AI tool, and making sure that you adapt it properly to fit what you're trying to deliver as your training course. Our assessors are very, very good at identifying information that's been generated from AI. And especially in terms of that information that is just not correct, so we have to do a lot of fact checking and making sure that we research a lot of information to make sure that what we're looking at and what we're reviewing and assessing is fit for purpose for those professionals who are going to be taking part.
Right. Is that becoming more of a problem, perhaps, like you say, where AI can generate misinformation by piecing other things together?
It's not a major problem, but it's becoming more so. Yes, I mean we do this kind of work anyway, regardless of where the information was generated from. We do a lot of research into the information that we've been provided with, a lot of fact checking, making sure that it aligns to industry standards, etc. And AI is it is useful. Don't get me wrong, it is useful, but again, don't rely on it solely. Okay, because again, the misinformation, the incorrect facts that are being drawn out of it is just what AI is right now. So the best thing to do is to say, take that piece as a foundation for your training course and build from there.
Great. So it's all about finding that balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are you facing any or seeing any issues in the industry currently? So perhaps is there a downturn in clients? Because we know in this financial climate at the moment that some companies are sort of not wanting to spend on development, etc. Are you seeing that at all in the industry?
Not so much, no, because what we provide, the service we provide is very much a benefit to other organizations, if that makes sense. It helps them promote themselves. It helps them stand out from the crowd as such when they gain CPD accreditation for the CPD provision they're delivering. Okay, so it's really important that we make sure that the service that they're being offered is of a high standard, and that's becoming one of the challenging things in our industry, quite frankly. Okay, because unfortunately there are some organizations, CPD accreditation organizations out there in the sector right now that employ methods that we don't class as suitable. Okay, so it's not our position to go and tell them to do their job differently. But ultimately, what we do is we put out a lot of information in the form of, video podcasts. We do a lot of blogs. We do a lot of information sharing with people around what CPD accreditation actually is, what you can expect from it, what is it, this kind of thing. Because unfortunately, the companies that I mentioned operate in different ways. I mean, there's a term we use called blanket accreditation, where a CPD organization will take your CPD provision. They will review a sample of what you've provided them with and then provide you with a logo of accreditation for all of your CPD provision. Okay, so in our view, that's not suitable. Every single piece of CPD provision should be reviewed and assessed on its own merit. Okay, now I am also aware of a few organizations that don't even review any of the information they've been sent. They literally sell a logo back to the client. And as long as payments are made, as however they structure their payment plans, that logo remains valid. Okay, so that, in my view, is extremely dangerous. Okay, so what we do a lot of to challenge that issue that is out there is to provide as much information to the general public as possible so that they're aware and they know what questions to ask of the CPD accreditation organization that they're engaging. And it's not just about coming to us for our services. This is about you, the consumer, wanting to buy CPD accreditation. You need to get value for your money. So ultimately, go and ask the questions of your CPD provider. Are they actually doing what they say they're going to be doing? And demonstrate it. Ask them to demonstrate it to you. Ask them, what are they measuring all of this against? How do they do it? What are their processes? And if they can't answer that, then unfortunately, I wouldn't be engaging their services.
So that's really interesting that, there are these people out there who, are trying to obviously perhaps make a quick buck, as it were, for not doing things properly, cutting those corners. Is there a regulating body or any kind of regulation at the moment for any kind of CPD in that case?
There's not an official regulator in the CPD accreditation industry. Now, there is a certification body called the CPD Register. Okay, so they're an official certification body, which we are very proud to be the first and currently only certified CPD accreditation organization. So it's something that the team have worked very hard to achieve, and we were extremely proud of it, So we released a bit of a video the other day, actually, just to really launch that idea. So, there is work being done in this space to try to give the consumer ultimately the information they require to make an informed decision. So go to the CPD Register, because they have a lot of information there that will help support your decision-making process.
That's a really important piece of information there, Andy. Thank you for sharing that. And congratulations for being the first on there. That's really impressive.
Yeah, we are really proud, I have to say. It took a lot of hard work, but we got there.
I'm sure, and obviously that's a testament to you and your hard work, which is really good to know. So obviously you've got these other companies then that sort of perhaps pose a slight challenge in the way that they may be cutting corners and not providing such, a good service. At the other end of the spectrum, are there things currently that make it much easier for you to operate right now? I guess sort of knowing that you are on that register and that you are very, very professional about the way you operate puts you at the forefront, I imagine. Are there any other things that make it easier for you as a company to operate in the space?
Well, transparency is key. We make sure that all the information that anybody's going to need about us or our services is in plain sight. Okay, so we find transparency extremely important because ultimately, people can see through, like smoke and mirrors, and cloak and dagger stuff. And we don't want to be associated with anything like that. What we
No.
do is all on our website. It's quite clear from our pricing right the way through to our accredited framework criteria. It's all there for the consumer to actually review before they even get in touch with us. Okay, so we try to be as clear and as open as possible to make sure that people are making their own decisions, their own informed decisions, and there's not anything behind the curtains when you open it that is going to ultimately cause you an issue further down the line.
Fantastic. And on that basis, how do you find attracting new clients right now? And has this changed much over the last 6 to 12 months at all?
Well, we're growing. We're growing at a very, very nice rate, if you would, from my opinion. But no, and it is all about that. It's building trust. And that's one thing we try to personalize who we are. All the people you see on our website are all members of staff. We don't use stock images and things like that. We try to represent ourselves in the way that we operate internally, which is a people first culture. And it's about, people buy from people. And we want to be there to be able to offer support and guidance as much as anything else. It's really important to us that we're here for not only our customers, but for the wider public to get the answers to the questions that they're looking for. Okay, so transparency is key, making sure that we are open, we're available, and people can communicate with us in any way that suits them.
Fantastic. And where do you source your clients? Obviously, because you have people wanting training from such a wide spectrum, how do you generally go about finding clients?
We use marketing. We've got a great marketing internally here at the CPD Group, and they work tirelessly in terms of following these trends that I mentioned earlier, and really kind of marketing into that space because if there are kind of changes in industry or changes in sector that require CPD accreditation, we want to present ourselves to those people to make sure that they've got the information they need. Because again, it's really important that they understand what they're getting into, and we provide that information and make it very, very clear as to what CPD accreditation is, well, what it should be, and what you can expect from that process and what to get ready for, and how to prepare yourself to actually start that process. So, that is really, really important to us.
Fantastic. And are there any ways that you have perhaps tried to gain clients, any methods that you've used that haven't been as successful at all?
Absolutely. I mean, when I first started here at the CPD Group, it was very sales focused, if that makes sense. People were making cold calls to training organizations to try to engage them in our service, etc. So that just did not work for me whatsoever. It felt too pressurized on the consumer. So what we've done is flip that on its head and become a guidance organization, providing information to people about what CPD accreditation is, how it works, and again, what to expect from the process, etc. And letting them go away, look at all of the various options that are available to them and let them make that informed decision. Right. And we are hoping, that the fact that we've been open, transparent and built trust with those individuals, that they will come to us naturally to work with us. So we very much find that the sales driven focus doesn't work. Not for us whatsoever. It's about information, it's about guidance, and it's about transparency and letting people make their own decisions.
Great. And you said you've got a marketing team there. How easy or hard has it been to attract high quality sales and marketing team members?
Well, I mean, it's the same for any company, isn't it? You're as only good as your people. So, we've got a great team in place now. And again, it's about that people first kind of philosophy. We're looking at kind of making sure that people who come to work for the CPD Group, that we look after their well-being, we look after their professional development, and we make sure it's a nice place for them to work. With that in mind, we've introduced a 4-day working week a while ago. So we work from Mondays to Thursdays, which in itself creates a lovely work-life balance, which you find on a Monday morning, our team all come back in raring to go because they've had a nice rest over the weekend. So it's those little kind of things that make a big difference to the retention of staff and, the caliber of applicants that come into us when we launch a job as well, is shot right up since we've been able to implement those kind of things.
That's fantastic. It's so important, isn't it, to have a good ethos in the company that makes people want to be there and to enjoy being there. So, that's great to hear.
They're able to bring their dogs into the building as well. You know, we have a very kind of, there's a pool table in the meeting room. Our meeting table actually takes the top off and there's a pool table underneath. So it's about just people kind of bonding together at work as well, you know, because we've kind of, well, the team have done it themselves, you know, created a really friendly atmosphere amongst themselves. And they're all good friends who socialize outside of work, and, you know, and it creates a really wonderful atmosphere internally. I mean, yesterday we had our annual bake-off. So, you know, everybody contributes to a bake-off. Although there was 10 submissions this year, so it meant I had to taste 10 different cakes and score them all. And that was hard work, I have to admit.
And was there a clear winner?
It was a carrot cake. You know, she's famous for her carrot cake. I think this is 2 years out of 3 she's won on that one.
Oh, really?
Next year we might have to say she can't enter that.
Brilliant. Well, that's, you know, it's really nice to hear that you've got that sort of team spirit there, that ethos. That's really, really good. And leading on to your personal role within your business, what's your day-to-day responsibilities? What does your day typically look like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, I mean, day to day, my role here is to very much work with the senior management team that are in place here at the CPD Group, making sure that we are as efficient as possible, making sure that the customer service that we offer is top notch, providing a personalized service, you know, to make sure that the customer feels that we're working with them. They're not just another number, you know, so that's really important to make sure that we keep that philosophy across the company and put all of the measures in place to make sure that we can do that, you know, so right the way from the technological side of things, right the way through to do our staff have the information they need to be effective, you know, so we look at that, we analyze the data that's been coming in, and we start to look at strategies for the future in terms of trends and looking at how we can use our marketing teams in its most effective form so that we can keep on top of these trends and make sure that we are providing services to those that need it. You know, so my day to day, I mean, it varies massively, but, you know, it's all about trying to ensure that we're efficient and we are offering the service that we tell people we're offering, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's really important that we do that, and, you know, making sure that everybody's comfortable in the space that we're operating in. Again, they've got the information and the tools they require to be effective, you know, all the way down to, you know, making sure that people's holidays don't clash and things like this, so that we've got everybody in place all the time. Everything. We do a bit of everything here.
Is there anything, if you could have one thing that you could hand over to somebody else to free up some of your time to focus on some of these efficiencies, etc., what would that one thing maybe be?
Oh, I don't think there's anything. I like to keep my finger on the pulse, if you like to call it that. We've even got a, you know, I like to get involved, very, very much involved in, we've got a member report feature as part of the website, where anybody who has concerns about anybody bearing the CPD Group brand, you know, they've got concerns about them, they can report it to us, and they can provide us with as much information and evidence that they have, and we'll do the investigation into that. Now, I like to get involved in those investigations because I think it's important that from the top down we understand what's happening out there, and then I'm able to, you know, investigate those situations, find out the cause, you know, and make sure that people that we you know, give our brand to and our accreditation to are operating in an ethical manner, essentially, that aligns with our business strategy and our ethical kind of outlook. You know, that's really important. We can't have people out there bearing the CPD Group brand that are doing all sorts of, you know, terrible things, and, you know, so I like to get involved there. So there isn't anything I would get rid of as such. You know, it's like I like to understand what we're doing. I like to make sure that we're doing things properly, and you know, it keeps me busy as well.
Great, fantastic. And within the business itself, what are the most? You said it's a growing business, and you know, and that's still really important to keep growing there. So, what are the most important metrics for you right now to keep that growth going?
Yeah, I mean, customer satisfaction's right up there. You know, we want to grow our network, and we want to build upon our customer base, but ultimately, you know, retention of customers and satisfaction of customers are two of the highest metrics we use. You know, because ultimately it gives us a real insight into how well we're doing. You know, because if our customers are happy and they've had a positive experience right from the beginning, you know, without being heavily sold to, right the way down to our accreditation advisors, supporting them through, providing them with the information so they can absorb what they need and take what they think is best suited for them. We'll guide them through that whole process, right the way through to our accreditation assessors, who you know, provide such a detailed and bespoke service to each of the clients that actually submit courses to us for accreditation. the whole thing needs to be seamless in my world, so it is really important that we build upon those things and we make sure that everything that we do, right the way from when you hear about us, right the way through to you being accredited buyers, it is smooth and effective for you. And that way, the positive experience at the front end will hopefully build the retention levels at the other end. Okay,
Yes.
so those are the two key things I like to keep in mind: satisfaction of the customer, and then ultimately, are we retaining those customers? If not, why not?
Why not? Really, really good. You're obviously very thorough there, and it's really good to hear everything that you're saying so far. Shows me sort of how detailed you are and how you want to make sure that everyone's happy from the beginning right through to the end of the journey. But also that retention, companies will come back to you for many years to come. Hopefully, take on new training as it develops, etc. So
A goal, yes.
yes, and looking to the future now, based on that, what would you see your business goals for, firstly, for the next 6 to 12 months, for example?
I mean, the short term and the long term are the same for me. We want to become the go-to CPD accreditation service in the world.
Right.
That's ultimately the goal. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. I do understand that. But it's about all of the things I've mentioned previously. If we can get all of those things right, naturally become the go-to, because people understand what we do and they trust that the service behind what they're paying for is, the highest possible quality. Okay, 6 to 12 months is the same for me as it would be for 5 years down the line. We want to be that go-to, and we need to do everything that we can, and we're doing everything we can, in my opinion, at this point, to be the go-to. And that only can grow over time.
And how are you going about that then? Obviously, if you want this global reach, what are you doing? What things are you putting in place to try and reach that goal?
Again, we do a lot of marketing around the information sharing. So it's not marketing to people in buy this, buy that, buy this, buy. It's not. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve, what CPD accreditation is. I mean, I keep coming back to that point. It's like a lot of people see a lovely website, and they think everything behind it is legitimate, let's call it. When unfortunately, in some instances, that might not be the case. Okay, so it's about putting that information out there, advising people, giving them an insight into what CPD accreditation is, whether you're from Africa or whether you're in the UK. It's all the same thing. It's about standards. It's about quality. Okay, and that's what we must maintain all times. So, we share that information as wide as we possibly can, again, through the blogs that we produce or the podcast that I host as well, things like that. And we try to share that information far across the globe as possible.
Great. That sounds really, really interesting and exciting, and I hope that growth does come for you, because obviously you're offering a quality service there, and it would really be amazing to see that global growth for you. And so I guess that's the sort of your main priority, isn't it? That was going to be my next question, is what is your main priority? And you've answered that already, so that's amazing. And you've explained sort of what you're implementing to get that out there. And again, the same thing really. Have you tried things within your outreach that haven't worked so well, other than sort of perhaps the cold calling?
That sales approach for me, it just doesn't work at all. I'll come back to it because it is such an important thing. It may well work very well for other organizations or for, in other sectors, but a sales approach for us is it's just not something that we felt worked at all. So we've tried a variety of different things in terms of our marketing strategy, trying to get the information out to different people in different ways. Now, I leave that to our marketing manager because, most of that goes way over my head, to be quite honest. But, we've got a very good team in place that understand what they're doing and understand our audience. So it's very much about kind of harnessing the waves that are happening out there and making sure that we provide the right information at the right time to the right people. So in terms of things that didn't work, it's difficult because we don't so much just say that didn't work. We'll tweak things. We'll keep moving. We're fluid. We're quite proactive when it comes to those things. So we find a way that works ultimately in the end.
Great, that's fantastic. And obviously, I know you've sort of alluded to there are companies out there who maybe do not do things properly. What about other competition out there in the marketplace that are doing things, along the proper lines? Is there much competition?
Yes. I mean, there's quite a few CPD accreditation organisations in the UK. It's one of the myths out there that we try to dispel quite often, actually, is that CPD is one big company. Lots of people believe that, and they'll contact any organization thinking we're all the same. We had one case recently where I had to instruct a lady that, very innocently, she'd put our logo on her website because she was CPD accredited by another organization. And she quite literally said to me, oh, sorry, I thought you were one big company and I liked that logo before that one. So I just used that one, So there is a big piece of education that I've mentioned before that we need to do with the CPD consumer to let them know exactly what it is and that there are different options, and don't just choose us. We're here, we're one of them, but go and have a look at the options that are available to you, but make sure you go to them armed with the right questions and the right information to find out, are they suitable for you or not?
Great. That's really interesting to know. It's great that you sort of point people in that direction as well. There are choices out there, but it's interesting to hear that people often think it's all under one umbrella. That's really interesting. Really, that surprised me. And on that basis then, just before we sort of end the podcast now, would you like to just let people know how they can find you and anything else that you'd like to share about the business?
Absolutely. I mean, please, if you have any questions about CPD, this is what I've been mentioning all the way through the podcast. We've provided a lot of information on our website to answer the common questions that we hear from people, regardless of whether they're our customers or not. So we take that information and we try to develop information and blogs and podcasts and anything like that will help answer those questions for people. So please do go to the CPD Group website. The URL is thecpd.group. Okay, and you'll find all the information on there that you require. Okay, so and one thing we're very keen on is for people to contact us if they do have questions, so that we can do another feature. We can put another blog out to answer that, because if they've got the question, it's the common thing that other people have probably got that question as well. So please do communicate with us. We're here to talk to you. We're all a very friendly bunch. You can contact us, email us, go on the live chat on the website, whatever suits you really. But do communicate with us, and we're happy to answer any questions that anybody might have at any time.
That's brilliant, Andy. Thanks so much for sharing that information, and thank you for your time today coming on the Growth Advantage podcast. It's been great.
That's great. It's been great. And I wish you all the luck with the podcast as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time today, Andy.
So take care, Rebecca. Bye-bye.
Bye.